So in the weeks following the release of Princess Peach Showtime, I found myself playing this game pretty much every other day because I am very normal about Princess Peach's character. I would replay all the levels in one sitting, trying to get every sparkle gem and ribbon first try for the fun of it, and then I try speedrunning it. And after doing a dozen attempts at getting everything, I started wondering, what if I tried getting nothing? How many sparkle gems does the game forces us to get and how many are optional? Is it even possible to complete Princess Peach Showtime while avoiding as many sparkle gems as the game allows? And today, that's the question we'll be answering. This is Princess Peach Showtime, but we collect as little sparkle gems as possible. Also no ribbons while we're at it, sorry little dude. The rules for this challenge are pretty straightforward. We need to finish the main story, meaning completing each floor and boss, while avoiding grabbing sparkle gems, or just sparkles as I most often call them. That thing about skipping a level by dying a few times isn't allowed, especially since we actually need to get as many obligatory sparkles as possible. Because yes, for those who don't know much about the game, sparkles are collectibles hidden in each stage that are required to progress to each floor, as we need them to open the boss's doors. Floor 1 needs 10 of them, and then 5 get added to the count each time, so we need 15 for floor 2, 20 for floor 3, 25 for floor 4, and finally 30 for the final boss. Once you give Stella your sparkles to open a door, they get taken out of your amount collected, meaning in total we need to collect at least 100 to finish the game. And when doing an all sparkles run, I reach 150 after doing all 30 levels, aka 120 after opening the last boss door. So to put it simply, there are 220 sparkle gems available before reaching the final boss, so the most we can miss is 120, which seems doable enough. And for those confused about what I call obligatory sparkles, basically you have two types of sparkle gems in that game. Those hidden in the levels that you have to either find or score high at something to get, and those that the game just gives you for following the path of the level. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the latter, since I could have just reduced the number of sparkles so the player will explore the levels more, in this case it works in our favor since, again, we won't be able to progress if we don't have enough sparkles. Lastly, I'm going to use the same path I use for speedruns, for those who might wonder why I don't play the levels in the game's correct order. The short version is that Peach is always facing the boss's door on the left side of the screen, and crossing the room takes less time near the stairs. So starting with the first floor, I go to the levels on the right side first to end the room on the left side. And with all that said, let's see if this game for babies, as some call it, allows you to finish it by doing the absolute bare minimum. So we first jump in by creating a new user, because as that game doesn't allow you to reset your data and I don't want to lose my completed file, I've just been creating and killing accounts on my Switch. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to skim over the intro and tutorial since it's unimportant, up to the end of the first room where we get our first sparkle gem, which is also the first sparkle of the game. This one isn't avoidable since we need to open the path to continue, and I don't know of any glitches that could make us face to the wall and into the loading zone. Continuing on with the next screen, we can simply walk past the second one and not take a detour up the wall where you need to make flowers bloom for the first sparkle. Then luckily the two sword fighters don't give us a sparkle for helping them, because yes, this can happen. Again, this game gives you sparkles for literally anything. And after that we can jump straight into our first transformation, which is Sword Fighter Peach. Right after we're done with the cutscene, we want to avoid killing the 3 enemies that show up, as getting rid of them gives us a sparkle. We can however do the same with the giant plant afterwards that we do have to kill, and we get our second sparkle for it. This is closely followed by our third one, as we are required to kill a bunch of enemies who reward us with a sparkle. The next one can be very easily avoided though, just don't go into the backstage area. Yeah, just as a side note, I know the location of pretty much every sparkle by now, so I'm going to point them out. And who knows, maybe it could be a guide for some people who struggle to find them all. Anyways, back to the level. The next one is from yet another fight, so we're forced to get it, while the next one can just be ignored. Finally, the last one is given by beating the boss and completing the level, which will be a recurring thing in this game. And with that, we finish the Castle of Storm with 5 sparkle gems. Not that great for a first level, but it could be worse. Trust me, it could be much worse. Now on to the first ninja level. We start on quite the bad note, as less than 10 seconds in we already get our first sparkle. The next one is easy to avoid though, but then we get back to our concern with our ninja transformation, as the third one is required to progress since we're in a 2D space and... Never mind, okay, we can actually dodge that one. After that, the fourth one is given by taking out the first guard, which luckily we don't need to do to continue. Same with the fifth one that's up on the roof, very easy to avoid. The sixth sparkle though is required, as we need to kill the red guard. Now you can move around the area, but you can't leave the room, I tried. Thankfully we get 3 very easy to miss sparkles afterwards. The 7th one is backstage in the corner of the room we were just in, the 8th one comes from shard and we can actually dodge all of them, and the 9th one comes from killing the enemy holding a teeth, which you can avoid by waiting a bit. The last one however is yet again a finish the level type of gem, so we have no other choice but to land the final blow and collect it, since if you don't hit the enemy you just get stuck in an infinite loop. In total, we got 3 sparkles in the Art of Rapids. 2 levels in and we already got a pretty big improvement. Moving on to the first cowgirl level, we start off by avoiding the first sparkle by just not going to the second house, and avoiding the second one that's out in the open in front of the saloon. The third one, however, is obligatory. You can actually go into the next room without lighting up the candles, but the tits don't follow unless you light up the one closest to said room, which gives you a sparkle. Like for the first sword fighter level, there might be a way to clip into the platform and skip this gem, but if there is, I don't know it. Luckily, the next 4 are incredibly easy to avoid. There's one for freeing all the tits in the saloon, so you just gotta avoid doing so, one by collecting shards during the horseback sequence that again can just be dodged, same for the one on top of a bunch of crates and the one later on that's in a box as well. Also try dodging some of the enemies and jewel boxes, just for the heck of it. I mean, if I'm trying to do the bare minimum, might as well fully commit to it. Then you have an obligatory one when capturing the bandits, which I tried not doing only for the game to catch them automatically. Like apparently if you wait too long the game will think you didn't get the hint or something and will do it for you. It's also not the only place where this happens. But anyways, yeah, regardless of whether you or the computer does it, you get a sparkle for it. Finally, don't go to the side of the boss room where there's a backstage for a sparkle, and you'll get one last sparkle from defeating the boss, making 3 obligatory sparkles in total for Cowgirl in the Wilderness. The number's still the same, but it's a low one, so it works for us. Then we get to the first passenger level in which the trend continues. The first sparkle can be avoided by just standing there and waiting, the enemy flies away eventually. Same with the second one, just don't hit the bird and you're good. The third one is also easy to dodge, it's just chilling in a corner. But then we have the baking minigames. Alright, so for the first one, you can get 3 gems. One for clearing the minimum required, one for maxing up the bar, and one for cooking at least 3 times with the tits, which is shown through those 3 green badges. Or at least I believe that's how you get those sparkles. For the cakes minigame, you get 1 sparkle for minimum completion and 1 sparkle for doing all of them properly. Oh, and if you don't clear the bare minimum, you lose the heart and need to start over. So for both those minigames, we're going to do set bare minimum, leading to us getting 2 sparkles. But hey, we get to dodge 3! 4 when including the one backstage in the room in between the 2 minigames. Finally, once you clear the level, you need to place a cookie on the giant cake, which grants you another gem for yet another total of 3 in Welcome to the Festival of Sweets. So as we clear out the last level, we reach a total of 14 sparkles, which seems like a lot, but remember that each of those levels has 10 of them, meaning we got 14 out of 40. That's barely above 1/4 of what was available, so we did pretty good. And it's enough to unlock the door to the boss. Speaking of the bosses, there's no sparkles to get until the post-game, so there's no point wasting time on them. That being said, since I'm also using this video to explain where every sparkle is, I wanted to give a few tips on how I made the sparkle requirement for each boss. Feel free to skip to the next floor. So first off, one thing to know is that every single boss does the same attacks in the same order. The only exception to this is Purrjector, the cat, who sometimes changes which side its paws show up, but even then it's on specific move, so it's technically still the same thing every single time. So to get all sparkle gems for Disco Wing, the requirements are not getting hit, never missing a projectile, and not letting any baby bird leave the room. The first 2 phases are incredibly easy. Just go to the left of the screen, hit the left disco ball when the boss is turning around, and then hit the middle one when the bird's hair is aligned with it. You can actually hit it earlier, but the hair is a good indicator to make sure you don't miss. On that note, the projectiles do steer towards the boss, but not by that much, hence using the hair to know when to send them. For the attacks between phases, I go to the middle platform in the first phase and right platform in the second phase, so that there's some distance between me and the boss in both cases for when the rolling attack starts, so it's easier to dodge. I also tend to use the ribbon after the jump so as to get more airtime. As for the move from the second hit where the boss jumps around in a ball, I just get close to it so I can dodge at its first jump, which feels easier. Finally, the last phase is a bit harder to get, and I'll be honest, I'm so used to the way I do it that I can actually explain how it works if you fail. Basically, what you do is stay on the left, kill the 3 babies as soon as they hatch, as you need to prevent them from leaving the screen. By the way, they can appear in phase 2 I believe if the boss changes the gravity because it wasn't hit enough, so be wary of that. Then when the boss starts flying back through the skin, hit one of the disco balls in the middle. You can hit both, but it only counts as 1 hit, and I don't know if as a result hitting both will make the game think you failed at the non-missing a projectile requirement. If it doesn't, then I do advise you to hit both if you can, because after that you need to wait for the boss to fly across the screen again to edit with the new disco balls it created, but there are some new hatchlings now. So what I do for them is get close to the disco ball on the left, wait for the babies to approach and use a ribbon on them. That way I avoid hitting the disco ball near the center, which will count as missing a projectile. But again, if you can hit both middle disco balls and not get penalized, you won't have to struggle with this configuration for the hatchlings. Finally, you hit the boss as it flies again, and it's done. Now, I'll be honest, I can't exactly tell you when you're supposed to hit the boss in phase 3, I just get a feel for it, so yeah, sorry if I can be more precise on that. Oh, and obviously, for those who don't want to do all those steps, you can also just do the boss several times. You don't have to get all sparkles in one go if you'd rather prioritize killing the hatchlings over not missing the projectiles or vice versa. That's what I did on my first playthrough. And with the disco bird down, we move on to the second floor where we're starting off with the first dashing tip stage. We get past the first screen where not much happens until we reach our first hurdle with those robots blocking the way. Now I've tried getting over them several times, but there seems to be an invisible wall including on the upper path. And even if we could get past, we then have to run back with the thief, which would probably be a mess for the game to compute. It would be funny though. But yeah, we gotta get a sparkle for this one. Oh, we need the second one as the first gem is behind a crate next to the hideout door, which we can avoid collecting. Once inside, we are forced to grab the first sparkle in order to unlock the dashing thief transformation, as again I have yet to hear of a glitch allowing you to face through walls, but after that things do chill out for a while. The first sparkle is on the upper pass of the gutter, which is actually easy to miss on the first playthrough. Then the fifth one is hidden behind the conveyor belt in the large room. You need to press a switch on the left of the platforms and run back to the entrance of the room on the conveyor belt where a door will now be open. As that makes me realize the kind of detour collecting everything leads to, hence why my time is an hour longer than the any % world records. The 30 seconds detours really add up over the course of 30 levels. Speaking of detours, the sixth one is yet again very easy to avoid, as it's on the upper pass of the latest room, and with this challenge actually made me take the lower pass for the first time since my original playthrough. Well, except when I go get the 7 sparkles that's sitting backstage at the very end of that lower pass, but I usually come from above to get it. As for the 8 sparkles, it's a shard one, so easy to avoid. But then we get to the next one, and yes, there's no avoiding this one. For once though, the very last sparkle can actually be dodged. It's sitting near the end of the glider section on an upward current. And with that, the perfect infiltration joins our roll of 3 sparkles per stage. Now, our chain of 3 does get broken in the next level, but in a very good way. The Ghostly Castle, the second Sword Fighter level that starts with a cutscene that's way too long, why can't we skip those dialogues, game? Anyways, as I was saying, this level is the second of a transformation we already got, which means it has 7 sparkles instead of 10. In other words, the game doesn't give you sparkles for doing literally anything, finally. Okay, we do get one for beating a bunch of enemies and killing the boss, but anything other than that needs to be found. The first sparkle is inside the vase in the prison cell, the second is a required enemies battle, the third is broken into shards in the 2D section, the fourth is backstage right after the ribbon guy, the fifth is in the chest that you need to trust upward to get, the sixth is in the vase right before the staircase, and just so you know, you need to get the sparkle first because if you break the bar, speech will leave automatically. And finally, the last one is a required boss fight. So with all that said, we finish this level with 2 sparkles, breaking a current record of how little gems we could get per level. After finishing this level, the game immediately throws us into the basement to do the Dark Sword Fighter and the arena, the first Sword Fighter level, or as I like to call it, the Sword Fighter Sparkler Rescue. This level, like the other Sparkler levels, only has 5 gems, which honestly every level in the game should have had 5 gems all hidden around the levels. 10 is way too much. But anyways, just like for the previous level, only 2 of the sparkles are obligatory, both related to mandatory fights. For the others, the first one is backstage on that platform with vase that you need to break, the second is hidden in a vase in the background when you hear the sparkler call for help, the third one is a required fight, the fourth one is in a vase right before the boss, and the last one is at the boss. So again, we leave with only 2 sparkles, going back to the second floor with 11 of them in tow, which isn't enough to open the borders yet, but don't worry, we'll have enough when we get there, you'll see. In the meantime, we get to the first figure skater level, which, just like for the patissier one, has sparkles given depending on your performance at the minigame, but we're not there yet. First off, the first sparkle is given after decorating the bushes on the first screen, so let's jump over them to the frozen pool where we're forced to kill an enemy, granting us a required gem. I tried waiting out, but yes, this guy isn't going anywhere. Then we have a bit of half walking, half cutscene until we reach yet another spot where we need to use our ribbon to progress, which gives us a sparkle. So far this level is being merciless. And it doesn't get better once you get to the transformation. The first half of the show is a tutorial of sorts, and no matter how long you wait, none of the cues will disappear. Same with the teats that you need to gather, forcing you in the end to get the first sparkle. By the way, back when I was messing around collecting everything on my finished save, I got a glitch that allowed me to keep the teats with me for the second half, which led me to 12 of them at the end, which was very funny. Sadly, I haven't managed to get it again. My theory is that I finished spinning on the frame that the circle appeared, making the game register that I did the spin without playing the animation. And by the way, those 4 teats are basically clones. They are supposed to be 8 performers. But anyways, yeah, we get the sparkle for the tutorial, but thankfully the second half is more merciful. Partly. I tried at first just not doing anything, but the game didn't like that. So I did enough to fill the snowflake and then waited, causing me to miss 1 sparkle. There's also one you're supposed to get for dancing with all 8 teats, or 12 depending on the day. But again, we can just wait it out and strike a pose alone, leading us to gain 1 sparkle, but at least it's better than 3. Since the troop gets kidnapped by the skater guy and we're hot on his trail, literally this time since we don't have to do a pit stop to get a gem backstage right outside the skating ring, on the way we get an opportunity for a shard sparkle which we promptly ignore and go fight the boss, giving us our last sparkle for this level. So in total, we got 5 sparkles for a snowflower and ice. We were doing so well until now. And the saddest part is, it gets worse, so much worse. Welcome to the Case of the Missing Mural, a level I usually love because Detective Peach is incredibly fun gameplay wise, but for this challenge this is hell on earth. I mean, not collecting a single sparkle is impossible to begin with, but you get the point. Basically, every time you guess correctly when in detective mode, which is what the whole level is about, you get a sparkle. And on top of it, this level has one of the shortest normal Peach segments, so it throws you straight into the costume. So, the first sparkle is a required one, which you get after beating up 2 bad guys. Again, I tried going around but the game said no. The second sparkle is behind a billboard and is actually avoidable, one of the rare ones in this level. Meanwhile, the third one is required, you get it by opening up the library. Yeah, this game really do be giving us those things for literally anything. After the magical girl segment, we re-enter the office where we get the first sparkle by finding the junior detective hiding under the pillows. Then we get outside where we avoid the backstage manhole like the plague and get to the museum. And starting from that point, every sparkle but one is required. You can't just jump straight to where the mural is, I tried. Instead, you need to find the duct which gives you a sparkle, find the 2 criminals which give you a sparkle each, and find the mural which, you guessed it, give you a sparkle. The only one we didn't get in that section is the one inside the sarcophagus which you open with a spiked key next to the duct. And with that, we finished the first detective level with 7 sparkles. We went from getting 3 to getting 7. On the positive side, surely with that many in one go we won't have any troubles with any of the boss's door, right? But yeah, it's on a disappointing note that we end the second floor with now 23 gems, which you convert into 8 after opening the door, a surprisingly low number remaining actually. And for those wondering, we got 19 sparkle out of 42, a higher number than floor 1 even in the context of doing one more level. I mean again, 7 of those come from a single stage with 10 gems available, which was all floor 1 was about. It's not the sparkler rescues that change anything here. Still, how much remains less than half the sparkles available, this must count for something. And with that, a few words about Lightfang, the snake boss. Again, feel free to skip this part if you don't care. The requirements for this one are no damage, no time rewinding, and shards collecting. And honestly, I highly recommend you to do it in at least 2 tries. One for the shards and one for the no damage and no time rewind. Thing is, it's possible not to have time be rewinded if the boss sees you, but the timing is tight. The speed of the boss's light is also pretty fast in the part, sometimes faster than Peach's rolling speed, not helped by the level being mainly vertical. So when you add the shard collecting into the mix, it's really not easy, especially the first and last screens. For the first screen, you need to wait half a second for the light to leave, and if you want to get all 3 sparkles at the same time, then go to the lower path to hide. For my attempts, it's not possible to simply make a run for the first shard which is on the upper path. You'll always get spotted and rewind time. You need to go lower first, wait until the light barely leaves your hiding place and quickly get up and out. Again, very tight timing, and I highly recommend you do shards and time rewind on 2 different attempts, taking the lower path for the rewind sparkle as it's easier not to get spotted. And for the Sass King, no, I don't think it's possible to take the lower path fully and then get back to the first screen after hitting the boss. Once you land the first hit and go up, you can actually just run immediately, the boss takes forever to start watching around. Same for the pass with the tail, the boss does spot you for it but doesn't rewind time until its attack is done, so if you go quickly enough there won't be any issues. The following few screens then are all about taking your time. There are plenty of places to hide, so as long as you don't rush it you'll be good. Oh, and for the second hit, I recommend hitting the light from below before grabbing the last shard. It earns a second since you don't have to get up there and makes you less likely to get spotted since the boss is stunned. For the third phase, there are again lots of hiding spots up until the last screen, and to be honest it took me forever to get an attempt where I managed to get the last shard without time getting rewinded. And those attempts require for the boss to be hit first and the shard grab second, along with being next to the small light when hitting it, hurrying up without missing a jump, getting ahead of the last tail attack, you get the idea. This part is not easy to do both requirements at once. By the end of the room, you will be spotted no matter what. The boss does stop for a second or two to do its tail attack, but you still need to hurry. Honestly, the best I can advise for this part is trial and error, and if you try doing shards and no rewind at the same time, good luck. So that's all for Lightfang. After that we move on to the next floor. Now on to floor 3, we're starting with the last level in the game's order, which is Melody of the Sea, the first mermaid level, meaning there are 10 sparkles in total. Yay! Though while I had no high expectations for this one, it turned out to be the biggest surprise of the entire challenge so far. The first sparkle is given by helping 2 tits against the sour bunch, which can be avoided easily. The second one is for using the ribbon of the seashell on the wall, which can also be avoided. The third one is in a clam once we get to the transformation, so we can just not go there. The fourth one is given by leading the fishes up past a clam that I thought you couldn't get past without opening, but then found from a tumblr post of all places that if you mash the B button you can actually dodge it. In any case, that sparkle is easy to miss for that challenge. Then the fifth one is in a clam that can be avoided, so again we don't get it. The sixth one is into a wall behind seaweed, so let's not touch that. The seventh 7th one is in between two wheels, which is easy to avoid if you don't push them too far. The 8th one is backstage, another perfect fish part. The 9th one is given after saving the third musician and is required. And the last one is given by not messing up the concert, so we're just going to only touch one fish per melody and not get it. So in total, out of the 10 available, we were able to dodge 9, only grabbing a single one. I'll be honest, I did not expect that, but hey, we'll take it. Now this challenge actually looks like a proper one. Moving on to Welcome to the Spooky Party, the second patissier level, meaning a 7th sparkle stage. I actually looked up the speedrun to see what the minimum cake decoration needed was, because just like for the first patissier level, you are forced to get sparkles for completing the minigames, but at least we can reduce the damage by doing the bare minimum. So for the first minigame we do some very normal frosting. If you're wondering, just keep holding the B button until the minigame starts. And yes, the animation being played twice afterwards is normal. Anyways, to get both gems you need to nail every cake, so we're only going to do the first 4 and the last properly. Again, that's what they do in the speedrun. After that, the third gem is given by helping one teeth with its zombie problem, so let's not do that. And then we get to the cookies minigame where you get 1 sparkle for completing it, 1 for cooking with the teeth, and I believe 1 for saving everyone. Now, because I wasn't sure about the last requirement, I just tried doing the bare minimum. So only doing little cookies that only feed one row doesn't work in the long run, and waiting until there are too many teeth is a dangerous game. Still, we managed to complete it with only 1 gem, and after that the last sparkle is backstage in between the 2 huts, so we're going straight to the ending, making us leave the level with only 2 sparkles in tow. Still going strong. After that, we jump to Cowgirl at Dusk, where most sparkles are yet again surprisingly easy to miss. The first one is in a saloon if you take the lower pass, the second is a shard sparkle which made me take that other lower pass for the very first time. Surprised to see there's an obstacle here. Then the third one is at the end of the first run section, so we wait a bit for the wagon to detach itself just to be sure. The first one is backstage at the end of the carriage. The fifth one is in a crate guarded by a bunch of enemies and is actually one of the least consistent sparkles to get. The sixth one is on the pass but still avoidable, and the last one is given for completing the level. Meaning that just like for Melody of the Sea, we finish the level with only 1 sparkle. Seems like for trees when obtaining all the sparkles is getting harder, which is good for us. Moving on to the first mighty level, Alien Invasion, this one is actually pretty funny to navigate ignoring everyone and letting them die, or at least trying to when it's possible. I actually try not helping as much as possible to see what would happen, and yet it can be very funny to reach the safe zone with literally no one in tow. But anyway, sparkles wise, we get back to what we used to in first levels. The first one is obtained by helping the first 2 teeth, so we just ignore them. The second one is required by lighting up the fountain. As per usual for the obstacle, you can bypass them, but I'll be curious if there are glitches to do so. After that, the third one is on a bus that we can safely ignore. The first one is given after protecting the teeth once we are in our mighty transformation, but outside of the first wave of UFOs that won't take the teeth away because tutorial, you're not required to help, so we can skip this gem. Then the fifth one is behind 2 broken cars, so let's not go there. The sixth one is required as you get it by killing the mini-boss. The seventh one is backstage right after the mini-boss. The eighth one is a shard sparkle during the last section of the level. The ninth one is by saving every teeth in the section, to which I decided not only to save none, but also to not kill any enemy, including when you have the giant robot at the end, until the game does it for you. Speaking of which, completing the level grants you a sparkle, making us finish the level with 3 sparkles. Not bad, but slightly disappointing after the previous one from that same floor. Still, this means we got 7 gems out of the 34 available on this floor, our lowest amount by far. Now it's at this point that the door for the boss appears, and we run into an issue as we need 20 sparkle gems to open it but only have 15. Thankfully we still have 2 levels available to us, the Cowgirl and Patissier Sparkler Rescues. But them being sparkler levels also mean we only have 5 sparkles each, and we're trying to get as little as possible. So let's see if we can clutch at least 2 in one level and 3 in the other. Starting with the Cowgirl Sparkler, we can dodge the first gem very easily, but the same can be said to the second one that we get for saving the Sparkler. Trust me, I tried. And it also gave me the opportunity to see what happens if you don't save the Sparkler. The answer is that the game does it for you if you're in the right lane, and makes you lose a heart and retry if you're not. In any case, the next sparkle is backstage before hopping onto the cart so we can avoid it, same for the fourth one that's carried in a crate on horseback. Finally, the last one is given by I think not letting any of the carts get destroyed, so we do the opposite and have them all taken out, making us leave the Dark Locomotive and the Doomtown with only 1 sparkle, which is good for this challenge but also bad as now we need 4 sparkle in the Patissier Sparkler Rescue. But hey, it's a Patissier level, it shouldn't be too hard. So, the Dark Baker and the Bewitching Suite, the Patissier Sparkler. The first sparkle is backstage in front of her house, so that's a bust. As for the other ones, it's the usual do everything right to get it challenges. For the cake ones, I first tried seeing if we could only partly decorate it and move on, but the answer is no. So instead I went to the last part, messed up a few times, waited for the sparkler to be on the same part and finished it, which worked. I think it probably has to do with messing up rather than waiting for the sparkler, but you know, just in case. For the Dark Baker challenge, I can tell for certain you need to cook with the sparkler, so not only did I not do that, but also tried doing as little cookies as possible. Again, having some fun trying to do the bare minimum to see if it's doable. The answer is yet again no, but you can get it by only doing 2 to 3 big batches. And after that, we get one obligatory sparkle by cooking for the Dark Baker. In the end, we leave with 2 sparkles, one for winning against the sparkler and one for giving the Dark Baker a cookie, which means we have done all the levels available to us and finished with 18 sparkle gems, too short of what we need to unlock the 4th floor, and that's not even getting to the next 25 we need for the 5th floor. So, is it possible to complete Princess Peach Showtime while collecting as little sparkle gems as possible? The answer is no, not even close since we're only about halfway through the game. As it turns out, this game actually makes you work for it more than some people like to imply. Still, just like most people usually do with those types of challenges, I wanted to see what the other levels would look like, so I went back to the Patissier Sparkler to grab the 2 missing gems and open the door to Purrjector. Speaking of the boss, as usual timestamp to skip, the requirements are no hit, only using 3 bombs and not getting hit by the paws or tail. This one was by far the toughest one to get every sparkle on in my first playthrough, and by that I'm talking about the not getting hit by the paws one. Thing is, you can technically just let the paws do their thing and avoid them, but it takes longer and you feel less in control than when you get rid of the paws yourself. Because of that, the best advice I can give you for this boss is to do it numerous times and learn its patterns, on top of understanding the hitbox of the paws, and it feels weird at times if you get too close. Like for the previous bosses, every attack is done in the same order, with sometimes the paw appearing on the right rather than the left or vice versa, but even then it's still the same attack. So to give some advice on that, the first phase only has 1 paw, so it's pretty straightforward. Oh, and for the slamming hands attack that is used to throw the bombs at it, I tend to go on one corner, jump a bit early and use Stella to hover a bit. And while I'm at it, the mice bombs come from the right hole for the first and second phase and the left one for the third phase, at least in the first cycle. And whenever a bomb gets destroyed by a paw, the boss will immediately do its slamming attack to start over the phase. For the second phase, turn the mouse into a bomb and then immediately run left as the boss will make its tail appear. From my understanding of it, the tail doesn't go past the mice holes. By the way, if it needs to be said, the bomb doesn't react to the tail attack. But anyways, after that, run right as the boss will use its tail again on the other side. Then you have 2 paws at the same time, appearing right first and left second. This attack is done a second time and then you have a singular paw which can appear either left or right. Unlike the other 2 paws that push you and the bomb on the side, this one crushes you and can crush the bomb, so I highly recommend getting rid of it. Just be careful not to jump too high, as again the hitbox can be weird. Also, from personal experience, once the paw is locked in and about to strike, you can't stop it. Finally, you have the third phase, which starts off with 2 crushing paw attacks, the second one being weird looking, followed by a single side paw. Then it does the right tail and paw at the same time. I believe it's always on the right side. For this one, dodge the tail and then go for the paw. You have enough time, the paws take forever to attack. After that, you have another crushing paw and side paw, followed by another paw and tail combo, this time on the left. Then this phase is done. Yeah, I know my description isn't the best given how much happens on this phase, sorry about that. Like I said earlier, the best advice I can give for this boss is to get good. Lastly, about where to put the bombs, I tend to keep them in the middle so I don't have to worry about it, but maybe putting them on the side might make it easier to dodge the paws? I'm not sure though. For context, the bombs push you around if you touch them, so it can be an obstacle if you let them somewhere you end up often standing. And if you do push them on the side, remember the attack pattern so you have the time to put them back in the middle and get out of the way when the boss does its slam attack. With all that said, good luck with this one, you'll need it. Even if you do it in several tries, the paw thing remains a pain in the ass. And honestly, it's better to do both the bombs and paws in one try, since the less bombs are used, the shorter the boss is and the less paws attack you have to deal with. And with that, we start the 4th floor without a single sparkle to spare. Yeah, like I said, this is basically over, but I'm still curious to know how many additional gems we need, so that's what we're going to keep track of now. So far we had 2 additional ones. Starting off, we have the second detective level. Oh boy, let's see if we get better luck than the first one. After all, we do have less gems to collect. Now, the first and second sparkle are in a bit of a weird order. The first is acquired by opening the right door after the stealth section, while the second is backstage on the far right of said door. Generally, you collect the second one first since it's then faster, but in our case, we're just going to collect the first one and move on. And speaking of a required gem followed by a non-required, the third sparkle is given by guessing the right place for the bomb, which we are forced to get, while the fourth one is right outside the clock tower, which you can easily avoid and it's probably easy to miss on the first playthrough. Then, luckily for us, the 5th and 6th one are a bit more obvious but also easier to avoid, as you get them for finding the 2 chips hidden in the tower, the first being on the lower floor at the left after getting the right key, while the second one is very in your face. Finally, the last sparkle is given for finishing the level and blowing up half the city. And with that, we finish the case of the rainy day plot with only 3 sparkles, much better than the first detective level. Moving on, we go to the first Kung Fu level, which is also the very last level left with 10 sparkles to collect, so let's get through it hoping for the best. The first sparkle is very easy to skip, it's in that house in the background. It's also the only one available before the transformation, although the second and third ones are equally as easy to avoid, just don't break the pole and the rocks and you'll be good. The first one, however, is a required one, which you get by beating up the Sour Bunch guy. Now I did try to leave the level and do that section again without pressing the button at the end, instead letting the game do it for you, but it still gives you a gem, so no luck. Same deal with letting the boss beat you up. The 5th and 6th one are easy to avoid though. The 5th gem is on a roof in that small market looking area, while the 6th one is a shard sparkle. So just don't get them. Then the 7th one is thankfully not given by completing the fighting section, but instead by beating up the enemies on the poles afterwards, so we let them live for once. This is immediately followed by 2 sparkles in the same room, one being another shard sparkle and the other being backstage right next to the pole leading to the ribbon guy. And finally, the 10th sparkle is actually not required, which is why I got back to the level afterwards to check on the first fight. At the end of the fight, when you're supposed to spam the attack, just don't do anything and let the game finish the boss for you. I actually tried different things about letting the boss kick your ass, just in case it had to do with your overall performance, but after coming back, no, it's only linked to the last attack. As a result, we're able to leave a Kung Fu Tail, the last 10 sparkles level, with only 1. I honestly didn't think this would happen again, but hey, I'm not complaining. Following with the second half of this floor, we have the stolen statue, the second dashing thief level. The first sparkle is during the plane auto-scroller, easy to get past. The second is also easy to dodge, that it's the shards one. As for the third, there's a section where you need to slide above the enemies, and basically coins appear as you do so, and you need to get all of those coins to make the sparkle appear. So just start by grabbing the second blue slider thing and you'll be fine. And fun fact, the coin thing is why in speedruns that don't immediately grab the second slider, since if you go faster than the coin, the sparkle doesn't appear. Yes, this has happened to me before. Anyways, going back to the gems you can skip, the fourth is backstage just outside the plane, while the fifth one is during the pipe running section or whatever you want to call it. The sixth, however, is the required one, given when you enter the airship's cabin. I tried going back and see if I could dodge it by waiting to take another grappling hook thing. Like, why are those things here if you can't use it? But yeah, you can actually use them, so you're forced to get it. As for the last one, it's on the upper pass during the escape, so yet another easy one to dodge. And with that, we end the stolen statue with yet again only one sparkle to show. Between that, a Kung Fu Tail, or even the Cowgirl and Mermaid levels from the previous floor, it really goes to show how the latter half of the game makes it more difficult to get gems if you're not putting in any effort whatsoever to actually get them. There are still a lot of sparkles right there for the taking, but you still need to at least walk towards them. You can't just coast around and get some for doing the bare minimum anymore. Finally, we end the floor with the Art of Flames, the second ninja level. This should be pretty good, those levels don't have much required moments. And indeed, while the second sparkle is required by saving your teeth, the first one right before it is easy to avoid, just don't go backstage. Same for the third one which is sitting on the left roof and the fourth one that's behind the rotating doors. The fifth one that I almost grabbed is also easy to skip, just go to the left pass to go up. Then the sixth and last one are both on the side scrolling section, with the former requiring to jump early to dodge and the latter being shards whose second half can be missed by jumping later. And with that, we can safely ride the snake thing and destroy the enemy base, finishing the level with yet again a single sparkle. Alas, while getting so little sparkles is good for our challenge, it also means we're far from the 25 required to open the boss door. We're actually at 6 out of 31, which for some reason I find really funny. We really got nothing this floor, it's great. Although I don't think it counts as breaking our last record, since last time we had 7, which is 1 more, out of 34, which is 3 more gems available. I was too lazy to do the percentages, but I'm pretty sure floor 3 is still our best score, not including the sparkler levels. Speaking of which, since we need more sparkles to progress, let's jump to the basement now that we've unlocked 3 additional levels. Starting with the one closest to the elevator, we're jumping right into the dark prison and the dangerous trap, the dashing thief sparkler rescue. Now the first half of this level is cut into 4 sections, all with the sparkle gem, with the proper order being top left, top right, bottom right. In my case, I usually switch top and bottom since it's faster, but for this video I'm just going to explain with the proper order in mind. So, the first sparkle is the shards one at a rotating platform, so very easy to dodge. The second one is backstage in the second room of the door teleportation thing, just go right instead of left to get it, so here we're just going left. The third one is also on the right of its respective room, so we're immediately going up to avoid it, and the fourth one is above the room with the laser chasing you down on the left. And with that, we'll free the sparkler and do our escape where we are faced with the last sparkle gem, which is a required one. It's after the slide across the laser room, and believe me, I tried to avoid it, failing a few times, trying to get past without using the last slider thing, but nothing worked. So dashing this sparkler was sadly not the level where we were for the first time able to live without grabbing a single sparkle, instead continuing on our run of 1 sparkle per level. After that, we move on to the Dark Ninja and the Legion of Guards. The Ninja Sparkler Rescue as the title more than implies, and it looks like the way things are going isn't changing anytime soon. The first sparkle is behind a guard, very easy to avoid. The following two meanwhile are both in that one Ocarina of Time looking section. You get one backstage under some pots and one for going to the left in the next room, so let's not go there. After that, we get to the auto-scroller, which yet again has two, one against the walls that you need to do a precise jump to get, and one at the very end by hitting the boss. And just like for the Dashing Thief Sparkler, I tried failing or waiting it out for the last one, hoping maybe if it took long enough or I failed enough times the game would let me go without it, but no, you'll get it no matter what. On the good side, we yet again leave a level with only one sparkle. And finally for this floor, the last level available is the Dark Museum and the Purple Mystery, the Detective Sparkler Rescue. Now sure, the first detective level was a mess, but hey, the second one made things easier, so surely this one won't have too many recurred sparkles, right? Wrong. This was so bad, you guys. The first sparkle is for solving the puzzles that open the door. I tried failing left and right, but it still gave me the gem. Same for the second one, which you get by guessing which person is the sparkler. I tried guessing all the wrong ones, but the game just resets the room rather than making the wrong ones disappear. Also yes, this means I did it in 2 tries, one to fail the museum section and one to fail the sparkler puzzle. I didn't have enough health for both. The first sparkle is also a required one after you solve the room puzzle. Again, I tried failing to no avail. Luckily, the first one can be avoided since it's backstage, but the last one is yet again required after you bust the Sour Bunch guy. Again, you can try doing your objection on the sparkler, but it doesn't work. And with that, we finish that level with 4 sparkles out of 5, the most we've gotten in any level relative to how many there are per level, I think. And I hope we don't get anything close to those detective levels again. And this also confirms that floor 3 was the most efficient so far for this challenge, since it didn't have any level barfing sparkles in your face. Now, while outside of this last level we had an amazing streak of 1 sparkle per level, this means that we're still missing sparkles to open the door, even after the bullshit that was the detective rescue. After doing those 7 levels available, we find ourselves at 12 sparkles, meaning we're missing 13 to open the door. So with that in mind, I went back to the Kung Fu and Dashing Thief levels, grabbing 9 and 4 sparkles respectively, so we have just enough to open the door. And with the 2 we were missing before to access this floor, this means that so far we need 15 more sparkles than what the bare minimum gives us. But yeah, now we can open the door and get to the boss, Spot Lion. As per usual, here's the time to skip. The requirements are no damage, only doing damage with striped orbs, and only using 9 orbs or less, which confuses me because 9 is the bare minimum needed since the boss takes 3 hits to go down each time. Anyway, Spot Lion is a pretty fun boss to complete. It looks hard when you first play it, including redoing it for the sparkles, but then you get to realize that it does the same attacks in the same order each and every single time, including which side of the screen it slides to. Better yet, which orbs are striped and which aren't is always the same thing too. Now, the downside is that I don't know its full pattern as a result as I kill it quickly, so all I can give you is a rundown on the go-to method to have all sparkles as quickly as possible. For phase 1, it's pretty easy. All of the orbs from the normal version of the room are striped, so you can use your upward attack to hit them right back at the boss. Spot Lion goes to the right, throws 4 orbs, goes to the left and does the same thing. For boss, just get under it, wait and shoot the ribbon up. Then the room will become the really cool looking mirror version, and here you need to let the first orb go and wait for the second one, which is striped. The boss will change sides before shooting the second one, so be wary of that. Once it does, hit it horizontally towards the boss when it's near the ground, so it ricochets against the wall and back into said boss due to it changing the walls of the room. Yeah, I know, I'm bad at describing things, so hopefully the visuals do a better job. Phase 2 will then kick in and you need to get to the far right of the room to get up the platforms where the boss will shoot an attack that you can deflect back. Then jump off the small ledge to do the same thing again when the boss shoots on the lower path. And be wary not to fall off this edge before the first attack. Also, just so you know, you can't fall into the pit below the boss. You then stay on the lower path for the lasers, jump on the upper path to avoid the second wave of said lasers, then just chill until the boss throws its second orb, as again the first one isn't striped. Note that the first orb won't reach you if you don't jump, even on the upper path, but the second one will as the boss goes lower. For the first phase, the boss will start by shooting diagonally, to which I go on the right side and wait for the orb to be closer to reflect it, since by the time the ribbon touches the orb, the boss will start moving and the two will collide, and yeah, it looks very cool. Now, I've seen an 80% speedrun where the player just stayed under the boss and reflected too, but since one of the requirements is to use 9 orbs or less, and just like for the disco, shooting 2 projectiles at once only counts as 1 attack, I don't know if this will work. I do think the way I do it is pretty easy, but it does require no hesitation. And as an aside, since it happened to me once, if you don't get the boss by the end of its attack cycle, meaning all the mirror stuff which ends with the room going back to normal and the boss having 3 clones, it will do the diagonal orbs but then go to the left instead of the right, so keep that in mind if you try my way of reflecting it. By the way, for the 3 clones attack, said clones never actually jump at you, it's always only the last one. And since I'm the laser attack in phase 3 is always started by the clone, so get under its platform to be safe. But be careful as the real end clone switch places before that attack. Finally, after its first attack, the boss will immediately go mirror's mode, double itself and shoot 2 orbs downwards. You can tell which one's the real one by it having that purple thing in its stomach. Also, it's always the one on the right on the first cycle. And conveniently, the real boss shoots 2 striped orbs, and since it's so downwards, you can just attack up and reflect them back in its face, thus ending the fight. Again, sorry that I can explain further for those who miss one of those steps, but hey, if you practice doing this, you'll get your sparkles in no time. With that boss done, we now jump to the next and last floor, with 4 new levels on top of the 4 sparkler rescues those will unlock, meaning we have 8 levels to find 30 sparkles while doing the bare minimum to get them. On top of that, all levels from now on will either give us 7 or 5 sparkles, no more 10 sparkles levels. Let's see how well this goes. Starting off with Blight of the Sea, the second mermaid level, the first 2 gems are very close to each other and are both avoidable. The first is backstage in the middle of the Tits Misery, while the second is inside the right clam. The third one is also inside the clam during the autoscroller and can be avoided. Then the fourth one is apparently required after beating up the 3 Sour Bunch guys that show up. I actually ended up waiting forever just in case those fights at the time limit after which you can get the sparkle, but no, of course not. So after 5 minutes of nothing, I took them out and was given a sparkle. Thankfully, the 5th one can easily be ignored, and I actually did fail to get it on my first playthrough because I didn't know throwing the hill would make it impossible to get back to the fishes. But then the 6th one is required after breaking the cage, which again you are forced to do, you can just sit there waiting. And finally, just like for the first mermaid level, you can just miss some notes and not get the gem as a result, thus making us end this level with only 2. Not bad. After this, we have the second figure skater stage, a parade on ice. Although I was afraid might grab all the detective ones, but it's not that bad. The first sparkle is required by helping the gang get rid of the Sour Bunch. Again, I tried waiting out and it doesn't work. Following that, you have the meat of the level, a long autoscroller section where most sparkles are. Now for this section, you're supposed to do enough figures to light the snowflake float, but don't do everything since it gives you a sparkle. There are also enemies showing up on the float that you have to get rid of lest they force you to redo the whole section. I actually tried doing jack shit other than getting rid of the enemies on my first try and the game didn't like that. Anyways, the sparkle gems. The first one of this section is at a jump that you need to time right, the second is by dancing with the tits and it's kind of funny seeing them disappointed in you. By the way, if you're wondering, you can only dance with them when they light up, with the order being the closest to the float, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, the bottom 2, and finally those you potentially missed. After that, the third sparkle of this part is by getting enough to light up the float in rainbow colors and posing in its center, which you can't avoid since everything below the rainbow brings you back to the halfway point of the level. Note that you don't have to get everything, and you shouldn't if you're trying to avoid getting yet another sparkle. So yeah, we're just doing the bare minimum for this challenge. Then the second to last one is backstage right before the boss so we can avoid it, while the last one is for winning the fight, so another obligatory one. And with that, we end the level with 3 sparkles out of 7, basically half of them. And speaking of obligatory sparkles, we then get to a Kung Fu Legend, the second Kung Fu level, in which you have to save 4 kids with the first 3 giving you a sparkle each, and it's not negotiable because what would it be? By the way, random thing, but have you noticed how each have a different number of strings on their hat? With the first you save having 4, the second having 3, etc. But anyways, yeah, going back to the level, the first sparkle is pretty late into it, given by saving the first kid. Then the second is given by beating the Sour Bunch guys that shows up again. And just like last time, waiting for the game to do the last attack for you doesn't save you from getting the gem. Then the third gem is yet again by saving a kid, same with the 5th one. No, the first one is backstage behind pots right before the pole falls that saves the third kid, so thankfully we can dodge it. Same deal with the 6th one, which you get pushed out by going up to the highest pole and then go down. After that, we save the last kid who spares us from getting a sparkle, fight the boss, and just like for a Kung Fu Tale, we can avoid doing the last attack to prevent us from getting one last sparkle. With that, we leave with 4. Why is it suddenly easier to get sparkles? What happened? Is the game actively trying to help the player get to 30 gems? In any case, we then jump into our last second level, Mighty Mission The Rescue, in which the first part always cracks me up with how close the characters are to the ground since we're in a theater. But yeah, this one opens right off the bat with 3 sparkles to get. Now, I'm not entirely sure how to get those, but from my understanding you get 1 for saving everyone, which is the most obvious, 1 for not letting the scientist ship run out of heart, since as it turned out you don't lose the level if they lose all their health, and finally you get 1 for beating up the boss properly, meaning actually doing the input required rather than letting the game play for you. Not getting a gem for this actually made me go back to the first level to check if the last sparkle was avoidable, but the answer is no. Again, I'm not 100% sure this is how it works, but from the looks of it, as long as you let most enemies leave and don't save everyone, and don't do any inputs to throw the boss, you'll be fine. After that, the group lands and already we have a sparkle backstage under the cars that we can skip. And then there's this chase scene with the UFO where you need to throw cars in order to save the teeth from being taken. In that case, we just don't. Same with the sparkle sitting on the side of this sequence, we just don't touch it. Then you have the fight sequence that doesn't offer any sparkle, sparkles, followed by a very long cutscene that is also so over the top it's hilarious. They went so hard on this level for no reason, it's great. But yeah, sadly the last sparkle is required even with no input, because apparently you can't end a single level without at least one sparkle. And with that said, we end the rescue with a single sparkle gem, finally back to low numbers. And with the 5th floor done, we now have 4 basement levels left. Because I'm yet again lazy, we're starting with the closest level, aka the Mighty Rescue. Now, the first sparkle gem is given by not letting the ship suffer any damage, so here we're just going to let it get hit repeatedly just to be sure and... Okay, no more than 2 hits or it goes down, got it! By the way, for those trying to get the sparkle, the meteors go right left, left right, middle, and very slow left followed by very quick right, so aim for the right one and throw it at the left, unless you're not helping the ribbon guy and have the middle meteorite to spare as a result. After that, we don't get a sparkle for helping the scientist, instead the second gem is backstage right after the fight, but you do get one for protecting them while they save the sparkler, which, just like for the airship on the previous level, we can just drain their health to avoid getting the sparkle. Finally, the last two are in the flying section. The first I believe is by throwing the sparkler at every single meteorite and debris so we can dodge it, while the last one is on the list of those obligatory and level sparkles. And with that, we finish Dark Space and the Great Meteor with one sparkle. Hopefully we can get that trend starting again. The next level after that is the Mermaid Sparkler, since again I'm lazy, and it's also one of the shortest levels in the game I believe. Here, the first sparkle is on the far right backstage so we can dodge it, but sadly the second one is given by the sparkler no matter what, because of course it is. Then there's one in the current that's easy to dodge, while the last two are in the singing part, one for getting the third part without mistake, yes it's specifically the third one, while the last one is by completing the last part. But since this part only has one fish and you need at least one fish per part to progress, yeah, we're forced to get this one, meaning we leave the Dark Depths and the Swirling Currents with 2 sparkles. Not that bad honestly, especially compared to some of the other levels available on floor 5. After this level, since we're on the right side of the screen, we jump straight into the Dark School and the Twisted Fist, another incredibly short level. Here, all of the sparkles except for the last one are scattered around the level, so they're all very easy to miss. The first is at the very beginning in the background, the second is backstage right after the rocks falling from the sky part, the third is immediately after on the upper path, and the fourth is slightly trickier as you need to jump on the right side after beating the enemies on the pole. Yeah, I say tricky because it took me an embarrassingly long time the first time I played to find it. As for the last one, you get it by defeating the boss, and again there's no way to prevent getting it, unless the game is coded in a way that forbids you from leaving a level without at least one sparkle, meaning if we grab one earlier and didn't do the fight properly, this one wouldn't show up, but I doubt it. Then likely just make sure every level had at least one obligatory sparkle, also that would still mean grabbing at least one. With that said, we leave with that soul sparkle and jump right into the very last level of the game, the Dark Ice and the Shadowy Stage, the Figure Skater Sparkler Rescue. Sparkles wise, this one is actually very similar to the Kung Fu Sparkler with them being scattered around. The first one is given by beating up all the enemies of the first room, the second is backstage right next to the door, the third one is thankfully not given by beating the boss but instead is the Shard Sparkle, which is actually a bit trickier to dodge than I expected. Then the fourth one is on a cliff that you need to hurry to, and the last one is yet again an obligatory and stage sparkle. How many of those are there in the game? In any case, this is yet again the only sparkle we'll get in that level. And with that level done, we finished every single level in the game while trying to get as little sparkle gems as possible. As of right now, our counter is at 15, meaning we need another 15 to open the door to Greb's boss battle. So with that in mind, I went back to the first mighty level to get everything and also test if you can avoid getting the last one, which you can't, followed by the first mermaid level, getting 7 and 8 sparkles respectively. With 30 sparkle gems now in our pockets, we come to Grapes, the final boss. This one I have little to no tips, but still, here's the time if you want to skip. Thing is, 2 out of the 3 requirements is just don't get hit, so it's pretty easy once you've done the boss a few times. What I can say to help is that 1, just like for the other bosses, all her attacks are done in the same order for boss forms. 2, if you restart in the second fight, it will restart you at that second fight, you won't have to do the whole first part all over again. And 3, I'd advise you to do the first part in 2 separate attempts, 1 for no damage where you just shoot off freely, and 1 to avoid hurting the holes, which is the third requirement. But yeah, other than that, not much to say. Be patient for the holes thing. By the way, it takes 4 hits to kill an owl, so be mindful when spamming the attack. The fire attack is the same in phases 1 and 2 with just a speed change, but it's different in phase 3. The holes have specific formations for each attack. In phase 3, the plane attack goes train, plane, train, plane, plane, train. Remember that you go faster when you're not shooting. The peacock tail Grape has in the first part indicates how much health she has left for each phase, and for the second part be wary of the laser attacks, those are the ones that give me the most trouble. So yeah, not much else, it's all about learning the boss to avoid getting hit and being patient for the underlings. With Grape now done and the Sparkle Theater saved and restored, we come to the end of that challenge. So, as we come to realize much earlier, it is not possible to finish Princess Peach Showtime with as little sparkle gems as possible. Starting with the third floor, we will need additional sparkles in order to progress. Still, this was an interesting challenge to do, if only for the sake of knowing. On that note, this made me low-key consider speedrunning the idea, but it will basically be any percent with an interesting extra steps, so I'm going to stick to my all sparkles and ribbons runs. Something I find particularly interesting about this challenge is the fact that if you had all the extra sparkles needed to progress, aka the ones that needed to go back into the levels to grab, it's worth noting the total is 30, which is the exact number needed to open Grape's door. In other words, if you had all levels available from the get-go but still had to give your sparkles for the bosses, you could do everything except for Grape. I don't know, I found it interesting. Likewise, right after I got the last gems needed to open Grape's door, Stella had to message about a new special dress being available at the shop, meaning in order to get the sparkle dress and ribbon, you need to get the minimum amount of sparkles required to finish the game, which amounts to 100 sparkles. Again, random but pretty interesting stuff. In general, I had some fun doing the maths for this game, like how for every new floor you unlock, we get one more second level, floor 2 having Sword Fighter, floor 3 with Patissier and Cowgirl, etc. until the last floor is nothing but second levels. This also means we unlock one more sparkle level each new floor. And number-wise, this means that for each new floor, one of the 10 gems levels becomes the 7 gems one, but also unlocks a new 5 gems level. So when you look at the total gem for each floor, we lose 3 but gain 5, hence leading to 2 more gems available each time. Again, random but interesting, and yes, I'm terrible at explaining it. Oh, when if it needs to be said, I'm not trying out the bosses challenges because avoiding the sparkles on those is incredibly easy. For the owl, just get hit, let the birdies leave the screen and miss at least one hit. For the snake, just ignore the shards and make a run for it so the time is reversed and again get hit once. For the cat, get hit once, touch a paw and make it crush a bomb. For the lion, get hit once, ignore whether the orbs are trapped or not and miss at least once. And for Grape, get hit once for each phase and kill the dancing dudes. Very easy stuff to fuck up. By the way, I didn't talk about the ribbon guy in this video, so tell me in the comments if you want me to list down all his spots in the 30 levels. I'll either reply individually if one person with enough likes asks, or if I get a dozen messages about it, I'll either write it down in the comments or in the description. And with all that said, thanks for watching and bye!